Hello, mighty companions and fellow miracle workers. Welcome to the Miracles Tribe and our weekly Wednesday Wisdom video. I'm Teresa McGallagher, and if you're new to our community, I want to welcome you to the Miracles Attraction community on Facebook. I come on live every Wednesday, and Carly Hardy, my business partner, is here every Monday with words of inspiration and encouragement and support for you. So this week, Carly talked about and surprised me, came on and talked about fears and how fears are false evidence appearing real. And she gave me a lot of kudos for coming on and speaking in public because I used to be terrified of public speaking. I didn't know she was going to talk about that. And when my husband listened to her talk, he was like, "Don't let your ego blow up," because she gave me so many compliments. It was embarrassing. But frankly, it's true. I used to be petrified of speaking in public, and I want to tell you a couple of stories. One, when I think I was in the 5th grade, I had to stand up and recite a poem in front of the class. Everybody in the class had to do it, and I spent days and days memorizing the poem. I still remember it to this day. It was Ozymandias, a kind of a heavy piece for a 10-year-old, but anyway, I stood up in front of the class to recite, and my heart started racing. I could feel the blood coursing through my veins, and my hands started sweating. I didn't know that stage fright was a thing. I didn't know that nerves could have these sort of physical symptoms. No one had prepared me for this. I had never stood up in public to speak in front of a group before, and I literally thought I was going to die. Like, I didn't know what was happening. I was so freaked out. Somehow I managed to spit out the poem, but I never wanted to get up in front of a group of people and speak again after that incident. However, when I got to college, I had to present papers in front of class. And there was one particular time that I remember in graduate school. I have a master's degree in international relations, and I had to get up in front of this group of students at Boston University and talk about a book that I had read and tell the rest of the class what the book was about. And I was so petrified. I was so terrified about being judged by the people who were watching me speak that I couldn't remember what I wanted to say. I started off, the professor stopped me and he was like, "Are you gonna get to the meat of this subject or what?" And I got so flustered. I remember coming out of that class in tears. My husband was waiting for me. We were newlyweds at the time, in the car, and I just came out and bawled in the car. So public speaking has never been my forte, and it has really pushed me out of my comfort zone this past year to come on and do these Facebook Lives. So I'm so thrilled that you have joined me and that you are here to listen to what I have to say, and hopefully it will have some coherence to it and I won't go off the rails. So I have a couple of tips to share with you in facing your fears that have helped me with public speaking. And I want to share them with you. You can use them in any kind of situation where you feel tense, where you feel your heart start to race, where you feel like you're trapped and you go into that fight or flight feeling that we all have as humans because our amygdala is trying to protect us and thinks that that is useful. It's not useful in this day and age when we're not running from tigers, but it still happens. It's part of our physiology. So the first thing is breath work, breathing, deep breathing. And I'm nervous every time I come on to do these Facebook Lives, but I try to take a deep breath. And because I have 20 years of practice with yoga and pranayama, I have a little bit of experience with that. Not a lot, but your breath is something that most of us take for granted. And I think most people are very shallow breathers and they're not conscious of their breathing. So just bringing some awareness to the breath can really help to calm your nervous system and really help to settle down whatever fears and anxieties that you are experiencing. So that's my first tip, is the breathing. There's also a science behind holotropic breathing, which I don't know a lot about, but it seems to really be useful for producing miraculous results in people. So there's pranayama and there's holotropic breathing. Those are two types of breathing but you can just do 6 breaths. Six seems to be a magic number scientifically for calming your nervous system down. The other thing is to remember that when you are engaging in this way, you're here not to impress, but to bless. So to remember that we're here to be of service whenever we're interacting with others. It's not all about us, because that's what the ego wants to tell you, right? It's all about me. How are people going to perceive me? But to remember that it's all about you. It's all about others. So I'm so thrilled and happy to see you here and to engage with you in this way, and to remember that as long as I am trying to share some truly valuable content, some really useful information, then I don't need to be nervous, because my intention is to bless you, and it's not all about me. So the breath work, the energy of service, and then the third thing is the thoughts. To look at the thoughts that you're having when you have to do something that frightens you, because nearly always we're frightened to step out of our comfort zone because we think we're going to be judged. We're afraid that we might embarrass ourselves, or that other people are going to think we're stupid, or that there's some sort of judgment there. And when we are not judging others, we don't worry about them judging us. So this is why my spiritual practice has been so useful, because it's allowed me to learn how to stop judging so much, to look at judgments, to drop judgments. And I found that when I let go of my own judgmental nature, that I no longer worried all the time about others judging me. So that is a process. It does take some mind training. It can take some time to undo the conditioning that we have been trained with all of our lives, but it certainly is a useful practice. And then finally, one of the things I learned that I thought was so cool is that when you're nervous, the same physical symptoms that you have when you're nervous, your racing heart, your shallow breath, the sweating, whatever it is, are the same physical symptoms that you have when you're excited about something. It's exactly physically the same. It's only our thoughts about what's happening that make it scary. So if you can tell yourself, I'm not nervous, I'm really excited, and take it from the negative to the positive, that will shift your energy. So you're no longer contracting in this contracting energy, but then you can be in a kind of expansive energy. So I just wanted to go on a little bit about fear, and where does fear come from, and why do so many of us live with fear and anxiety. And Carly was raised in a religion and a faith that taught her that God is punitive. She frequently tells me that A Course in Miracles has saved her from the belief in a punitive God, that she really thought that she was going to end up in hell and burn for all eternity if she didn't get it right. And I did not grow up with that kind of scary religious programming. I did grow up in church, but for me, God was more like Santa Claus. He's always watching you. He knows when you're good. He knows when you're bad. And you may or may not get rewarded on how you behave. So I thought I would talk a little bit about behavior, because it came to me earlier this week how funny it is that we think of children as misbehaving. I have 3 kids. I've raised 3 kids, and all of them, it was very hard for me when they were younger, because I wasn't dedicated to my spiritual practice at that time. And so my method of parenting was to try to control them, to try to make them behave. And that came from feeling like their behavior was a reflection on me as a parent, and that other people would judge me if my kids ran amok and they were wild. And so, of course, what did I get? God blessed me with wild children. I didn't get these docile kind of kids that just sit in the corner and read a book. I got kids that were full of energy and very vibrant and lively, and so it constantly felt like a challenge and very stressful trying to raise them. Fortunately, my husband is very relaxed. So when I felt like I just couldn't deal with them, I just would pass the kids off to him, and I'd be like, you take over, because I'm going to lose my mind and smack somebody if, I can't get a break. But it occurred to me how funny it is that we can think that children can misbehave, because children come into this world with an instinctive energy about what life is all about. They understand that we're here to grow. We're here to learn. We're here to be curious. We're here to have new experiences. We're here to love one another. This is what babies do instinctively. They just are little bundles of love, and they're all about trying new things and experimenting and learning what the world is all about. And what do we as adults do? We try to quash that. We're like, no, that's appropriate sometimes, but not all the time. Or you can do that in this environment, but not in that environment. And for me, growing up with a very rigid set of expectations about what good behavior constituted, I came to realize that even though I did not believe in a punitive God, I did believe that somebody was always kind of watching, and I don't even know how to describe this. It kind of sounds stupid, but I always felt this subtle pressure that I had to get it right or do it right, because I might get in trouble somehow, but it wasn't a real thing. Like I really thought I was going to land in jail, or I really thought that somebody was going to call me on it. It was just this subtle pressure that I put on myself to get it right. And it comes from growing up in this societal system that teaches us that there are levels to things, that there is a hierarchy. Some people are good, some people are bad. Some people are smart, some people are dumb. You can get an A on the paper, or you can fail the paper. And then they tell you when you're growing up that things are going to go on your permanent record. And then you graduate from high school and you find out that's not true. There's no permanent record. No one is keeping track of all of our transgressions. No one except for us. And then we carry around this regret and sense of failure and belief that we're not good enough, because we've been keeping tabs on all of those things that we screwed up once upon a time. So what I want to share with you this week is that no one's watching, no one's keeping track. No God up in the sky is going to whack you on the head with a stick or strike you with lightning because you said the wrong thing or did the wrong thing. We can all just take a breath and relax. And that's what we need to do. Everybody needs to simmer down a little bit. Stop making a big deal out of things. Stop taking life so seriously. We are here to grow and have fun and experiment and evolve and learn and share and love. That is what we are here for. So I spent all these years, decades, trying to get it right, trying to do the right thing, trying to, follow the rules. For what? Nobody cares. And this subtle form of pressure that we put on ourselves is what makes us feel fearful, makes us feel anxious, makes us feel stressed out. And we don't need to do that to ourselves. We need to love ourselves. We need to give ourselves grace. So I'm just going to end with one of my miracle stories, and it's about the police. So I don't know about you, but even though I never broke any laws in my life and I never spent a single night in jail, whenever I would see a police officer, my heart would start to race. If I was out driving around and a police car would get behind me, I don't know if you have this kind of experience, but I would always become very nervous. Oh, I'm going to get pulled over. I'm going to get a ticket. I'm going to get in trouble. So a couple of years ago, actually it was in 2015 that this happened. So 7 years ago, I had just returned home from a spiritual workshop, and I was on a high. I was my frequency was really high, and I was really excited about life. And I went and met somebody for lunch. And as I was driving home, I went to another town that was about 40 minutes away. And as I was driving home, a sheriff got on my tail and followed me. And I thought, okay, I admit I do have a history of speeding. I like to go fast. And so I saw the sheriff in the rearview mirror, and I thought, I better check the speedometer, make sure I'm doing the speed limit, and then just to be on the safe side, I put the car on cruise control because it didn't want to go over the speed limit. We were going through these winding country roads, and I think the speed limit was 35 or something, and he followed me the whole way home. He was on my tail. But I was listening to A Course in Miracles in my car on CD at that time. So I was focused on my lesson. I was like, the cruise control is going to make sure I don't speed. I should be good to get home. I got almost to my house, like a couple of blocks away, and he peeled off, and I breathed a sigh of relief, and I was like, okay, I'm good. Within a minute, another sheriff, a different sheriff, got on my tail and started following me home, and within a few minutes pulled me over. When he came up to the window of my car, he was irate. He was red, flushed, he looked really angry, his veins were bulging, like he really looked like he was in a bad mood, he was really pissed off. And he asked me for my license, and he went back to his car to run my license. And in the past, if an incident like this had happened, I would have freaked out. I would have been a nervous wreck. I would have been sitting there like hyperventilating, thinking, you know, I'm going to get a ticket, I'm not going to have the money to pay it, it's going to be points on my record, like all the things, right? But in this particular instance, for the first time in my life, because I had been practicing the course and I had been trying to apply the teachings, I decided that no matter what happened, I was not going to let it disturb my peace. I just sat in my car and breathed, listened to the book on tape, listened to the text that I was listening to, and focused on that, and refused to let my attention go to all the bad things that could happen, what the police officer might say. I just sat there and I stayed in my peace. When that police officer came back to my window, he had transformed in a very supernatural way. Like, it was the same guy, but it was not the same energy. It was almost like he was a different person. He was laughing, he was happy, he was in this jovial mood, and he gave me a citation and he said, I see you like to speed. You've gotten a speeding ticket every year for the past 3 years. And, you know, drive safe home. So he drove off, and I sat there and I thought, it doesn't matter what this ticket says, I am not going to let it disturb my peace. And when I looked down at the ticket, it wasn't a ticket, it was just a warning, and I had been let go. So the whole point of the story is that we often let fears take over our lives to the point where it sucks us down, and we are the ones who are doing it to ourselves. It isn't something from outside. Yeah, the police officer's following me, but I didn't have to let that destroy my day. And once I had made up my mind, and there is nothing so powerful as a made-up mind. Once I had made up my mind that I was going to stay in my peace no matter what, and I was not going to focus on the problem, but I was going to focus on God, focus on love, focus on what really matters, everything resolved and worked itself out. I kind of had the hair stand up on the back of my neck when that police officer came back, and his mood had shifted 180 degrees. It was kind of eerie. But that's my message this week about dealing with fears, remembering to bless instead of impress, drop the judgment of others so that you don't worry about them judging you, remember to breathe, take deep breaths, and stay in your peace. Thanks for joining me so much. If you'd like to subscribe to our newsletter, you can sign up at www.miraclestribe.com, and I'll be speaking at the TAT Foundation this weekend. If you're in the Raleigh-Durham area, you might want to come by to Hurdle Mills, North Carolina, at the TAT Foundation workshop. They have a spiritual workshop every quarter, and it lasts for the weekend. It stands for Truth and Transmission, and it's a really nice group of spiritual seekers who come together to help one another on their path that they have chosen. So I'm going to be speaking about A Course in Miracles, which is not a typical path for the members of that group. That group was founded originally by an enlightened man from West Virginia named Richard Rose. He had this like revelatory awakening experience, and then he dedicated the rest of his life to trying to help others to see the truth and to have an awakening. And no one became enlightened that he worked with during his lifetime, but he planted a lot of seeds. He formed these self-inquiry groups at different places around the country, starting in Pittsburgh, and they still exist to this day. And since that time, I think he lived in like the 1930s or 40s and 50s. Since that time, quite a few members of that organization have awakened and had become enlightened. So it's a really wonderful group of people to hang with, because they know what it feels like to have this existential angst and wonder what life is all about and why am I here, and then they found the answer and they want to share that with others. So that's happening this weekend, and then that's all I have to say. Thanks for joining me. I'm Teresa McGallagher, and I love you. Bye-bye.